Today we're making Georgia's national dish, Khachapuri, which translates to cheese bread. The version you might have seen on social media is Megruli style. It's Sofia Vergara of Khachapuri. It's got an adorable shape, that sexy egg yolk, and if cheese pool was measured in bra sizes, Megruli would be at triple D. But to my taste, it's a bit much. My favorite Khachapuri style is Megruli. It has cheese both in and out, but these layers of cheese are perfectly balanced by the dough, and it's the dough texture rather than the pool of cheese that is the star of the show here. It's almost paper thin in the middle, but bubbly and chewy on the edges. Let's put our flour in the bowl and get started. Add the yeast, sugar, and salt. If you're new to working with yeast, check the description below the video for which yeast to buy and how to store it. Mix your dry ingredients and make a well in the center. Bring your milk and water to roughly 80 degrees. I do this in the microwave in 5-second bursts. Pour the milk, water, and olive oil into the well. I add a little flour into the wet ingredients, mix until it's moistened, and then add some more. There is no need to wait for the mixture in the center of your well to become homogeneous. It's fine if it's lumpy. Keep going like that until the dough thickens. Then, instead of stirring, your motions look more like kneading. You fold the bowl towards you using a spoon and rotate the bowl with the other hand. Keep folding and rotating until all the flour is absorbed. Scrape the bottom and the sides to make sure you got all the flour, and scrape off your spoon. Give the dough a few more folds until it starts to stick to the bottom of the bowl. Cover the dough and let it sit for 30 minutes to give the flour a chance to soak up all the liquid. Now that the flour is fully hydrated, we'll develop enough structure in only 12 folds. Oil your hand using either olive or vegetable oil and pick up the dough like this. Stretch it out slowly and gently and fold it over. Rotate the bowl slightly and repeat the stretch and fold. Rotate the bowl again and make another fold. If your hands get too sticky, oil them some more. Notice how I'm wiggling the dough to stretch it out. It's amazing how quickly this dough transforms from a shaggy mess to a stretchy and smooth ball. Flip it over smooth side up. Cover and let it sit for an hour, although if you're in a rush, 30 minutes will suffice. Pour about a teaspoon of vegetable oil into 2 little bowls with roughly 2-cup capacity and spread it out all over the inside of the bowls to oil them well. Oil a spoon and cut the dough in half. Scoop the first bowl into the first little bowl, placing it smooth side down. In other words, the top of the dough should end up on the bottom of the little bowl. And repeat with the second bowl. Oil your fingers and stretch the dough towards the center like shaping a dumpling. Pinch the dough on top and flip the bowl over so that the smooth side ends up on top. Repeat with the second bowl. Fold it towards the center, pinch it together, and flip it over. Cover both bowls and put in the fridge for at least 12 hours and up to 3 days. You could bake this dough straight from the fridge, but you'll get tremendously more bubbles and chew if you let it sit at room temperature for 2 hours before shaping and baking. 30 minutes before you're ready to bake, preheat the oven to 450 degrees with a pizza stone or steel in the bottom third of the oven. Scallions and herbs are optional in this filling and probably not very traditional, but I love the freshness they give to this dish. Today I'm using cilantro, but you can try any mix of scallions, parsley, cilantro, and dill. In Georgia, the cheese is used for khachapuri, a suluguni, which becomes stretchy when it melts, and imeruli, which is salty, sour, and crumbly. The easiest substitutions for American cooks are mozzarella and feta. For mozzarella, make sure you buy the low moisture kind that you would use for pizza, not the fresh mozzarella balls sold in water. Pre-shredded mozzarella is covered in cellulose, which affects the texture of the dish, so I strongly suggest you grate the cheese yourself. For feta, my favorite kind is made with sheep milk or a combination of sheep and goat. Cow milk feta often tastes rubbery, so I avoid it. Dry it on paper towels and crumble with your fingers. I also like to add a little whipped cream cheese, but regular cream cheese will work as well. Add a yolk, a little black pepper, and mix very thoroughly. If you find big pieces of feta, smash them with the back of a spoon. A silicone spatula works really well for this task. Divide the dough in half and roll each half into a ball. Here is our beautiful dough that is warmed up to room temperature for 2 hours. Pour about a teaspoon of vegetable oil onto a piece of parchment paper and spread in a circle that's about 7 inches in diameter. Uncover the dough and flip it onto the parchment. Gently nudge it out of the bowl without pulling. Keep going around the sides of the bowl, gently loosening the dough until it drops. There it is. Oil your hands and pat it into an even circle, roughly 7 inches in diameter. Put one ball of filling on top and flatten it out into a thick disc. Bring the edges of the dough towards the center to enclose the filling. It might not look like the dough will reach, but don't worry, it's very stretchy. It should look like a huge dumpling. Then firmly press down on the dough, starting in the center and working your way toward the outside. What's so cool about the shaping method is that the dough can't shrink back. The filling holds it in place, allowing you to stretch it until it's nice and thin. Personally, I like leaving the edge a little puffier, and I'm only stretching until my circle is 7 to 8 inches in diameter. If you have bubbles on the sides, let them be. They give the dough a great texture. Mix a yolk with a little sour cream and brush all over the dough. Be thorough but gentle when you're brushing the edges. You don't want to pop those lovely bubbles. And like we didn't have enough cheese in this bread already, we're going to sprinkle it with a bit more mozzarella. Make a little hole in the center to allow the steam to escape and to prevent khachapuri from blowing up in the oven like a balloon. Slide the parchment paper onto a rimless baking sheet and then onto the stone. Bake for 12 minutes or until khachapuri is brown both on top and on the bottom. Pull it out of the oven and slide onto a cooling rack. And place the parchment that you baked on underneath the rack. Immediately brush the dough all over with melted butter. The rack prevents the bottom crust from getting soggy, and the parchment catches the butter drips. Cool for 5 minutes and enjoy. This dough is simply magical. Here, let me rip a piece for you so that you can see the texture. The hardest part in all of this is figuring out the best temperature, time, and placement in your oven. I found it impossible to keep the bottom crisp using a regular baking sheet. Pizza stone or steel produce the best results, but there are other options. If you have a large cast iron skillet, you could set the oven rack to the lowest possible setting, flip the cast iron skillet, and preheat it with the oven, and then slide your khachapuri with parchment onto the back of the skillet. This round black pan that came with my Breville toaster oven is another good option. Preheating it empty tends to warp it, but it produces a decent bottom even without preheating. Luckily, you can buy this pan on Amazon without the oven. The most typical problem is that the top of your bread is burning while the bottom is pale. If that happens, don't panic. Slide the whole thing into a preheated skillet and finish it on the stovetop. Next time, Preheat the oven longer, try a higher temperature, and move the oven rack even closer to the bottom of the oven. Now, what about the opposite problem? What if the bottom is getting too dark, but the top is not browning? In that case, you could turn on the convection fan to speed up the top browning. If you don't have a convection fan, you could slide the parchment onto a rimless baking sheet and place it on the top rack of the oven to get it closer to the top wall. The moral of the story is that it will take some delicious experimentation. Here are more very detailed culinary tutorials for you to check out, and if you are ever in the Boston area, maybe I'll see you in one of my classes.